Lost in the Book events, localized into English as Storybook Adventures, are events where characters are sucked into a magical book and put into situations. They meet characters from Disney media like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, or Jack from The Nightmare Before Christmas. They all work together towards some goal, and then the twist characters return to their world with either no memory or rapidly fading memory of what just happened. With the Stitch event, everything seemed pretty straightforward, but with the Nightmare Before Christmas event, things got infinitely more complicated. Today we're going to talk about the storybooks from the Storybook Adventure series, and discuss some possibilities of what's going on there. This is honestly more of a loosey-goosey sort of video and not a super solid, compelling essay kind of video. I'm just throwing out potential ideas for what could be going on. So let's go ahead and discuss, what exactly are the storybooks in these events? Like I said, the Stitch event made everything seem pretty straightforward. The storybooks are just highly sophisticated enchanted books that suck people in, and once they've completed the story, are able to go home. And I still think that's a very strong possibility, but I think there's two other potential explanations for storybooks. Either they're pocket dimensions, or some kind of domain magic. Let's start off with the easiest option first, though. The storybooks just being enchanted books is the simplest answer. These are just books that through magic can suck people in, have them interact with fictional characters in the story, and once the real people have gone through the storyline, their memories are more or less borrowed by the book's spell and written into the book, and the real people can go home with very little memory of what just happened. And it's only when they die do they regain those memories. Enchanted objects are a dime a dozen in Twisted Wonderland. Loads of things have magic in them. There's technology with magic, there's magic artifacts like the Dark Mirror and the Bell of Solace, and then there's just random objects with magic in them like the window from a Radiant reenactment. There being a book with magic isn't a far-fetched idea, especially since honestly, it's very similar to that window I just mentioned. Both trap people into a specific scenario and will only let people out once they've completed certain objectives. Allegedly. To be honest, I'm not sure that's exactly what's going on with the storybooks, but it's very, very likely. In a Radiant reenactment, the guys had to recreate the story of the Princess in the Tower before being able to leave. Likewise, it seems like in the Storybook Adventures, the gang also has to go through a storyline before they're able to leave. If I had to take a guess, I would say the books are probably a more sophisticated, more elaborate version of whatever that window is, because the gang gets sucked into the books and their memories are temporarily taken and used as content for the books themselves. The books are more or less their own world, but that window, 1, let the guys keep their memories so that doesn't seem to be a factor at all with the window, and 2, they weren't transported to a self-contained world. They were still in Twisted Wonderland, still in NRC's library, but they still had to do the whole storyline thing and requirements to, leave. The similarities between that window and the storybooks makes me think that they might be almost the same thing, but the storybooks are just the fancier version. And also, I just think this is the straightforward answer. It's an enchanted book. That's it. That's the tweet. But I have to admit there's another possibility that I haven't been able to get out of my head for a while now. Although it sounds absolutely insane, I think there's a chance that these books aren't just enchanted books, but rather they're contained pocket dimensions. Pocket dimensions are something we're not super knowledgeable about in Twist, but they're a thing. They're little realms that are within another realm, but they're not physical places on a map. I really don't know how to explain these. I feel like the name is pretty self-explanatory. But anyways, I think the storybooks could just be some sort of pocket dimension with people and creatures and stuff just living there permanently. First, we know that people can live inside pocket dimensions just fine. All the dorms except Ramshackle are hosted within pocket dimensions. As long as you have a steady supply of food, you could probably live in a pocket dimension for your whole life. And as we see in both Stitch's Tropical Turbulence and Twisted Thrills, both of these settings have consistent food sources with fish and fruit, and whatever the hell is going on in Sally's garden, respectively. So food wouldn't be an issue when it comes to survival. The storybooks at least are set up for people to be there indefinitely. Second, we also know that like the dorms, there's borders in the storybook areas. At NRC, you can just go to the edge of a dorm, although it's unclear if it's a solid barrier or not, I would imagine so. But both the dorms and the storybook areas are contained spaces, so it would make sense that at some point there is something like a wall within the dorms. But my point is that there's a barrier in both, most likely. And also, they're contained spaces, they don't stretch out forever, they're finite. Third, we can assume that although these storybooks are somewhat cut off from Twisted Wonderland, travel between them is possible and may not be as restrictive as we first thought. People absolutely get sucked into these books, so that's a sign of travel, obviously. But I have to wonder for maybe all the storybooks, or maybe just a few, if the denizens of that book can actually leave and that restriction of playing out a storyline isn't actually as strict as we thought. In the Nightmare Before Christmas event, Jack Skellington 1 knows there's a door to the human world, and 2, has assumedly traveled to the human world before. After all, Scully's village reveres him, so if this is truly a pocket dimension, he would have had to leave at some point. And whether or not this was after completing a storyline or not, we don't know, but in theory, the residents of the book can also leave. And to further this point, the students never actually tried the door before the end of the event. They didn't know where it was. It's entirely possible that if they had found it, they may have been able to leave early. Truthfully, this point is mostly speculation, but my point is that both parties, Twisted Wonderland denizens and those in pocket dimensions, can theoretically leave and may not be bound to the rules we thought were in place. After all, the Nightmare Before Christmas event really shook up what we thought we knew in the first place. It wouldn't surprise me if the next one gives more lore. And also, I need to point out that the characters in Twisted Wonderland regularly travel to other places via mirrors, and what's on the cover of these books? Mirrors. Although, to be fair, you could also make the argument that traveling is done via book pages since the books do open up, but it's still strange that a mirror, which we all know is a means of transportation, is on the covers of these books. As of signaling, these are places you can travel to. Although the evidence is very speculative, I do think there's a possibility of these storybooks just being pocket dimensions. And as for our final explanation, let's chat about these storybooks potentially being domain magic. Admittedly, there's still a lot we don't know about domain magic, which is why a lot of this is speculative. But again, this is a speculation video, so I mean, yeah. My first point for this is that we know domain magic affects time. Malleus has used this type of magic twice. Once in Endless Halloween Night, where he trapped NRC and kept it so it was always Halloween, and during the main story where he took over Sage's Island and froze time in that space. The storybooks also have weird time stuff going on, and I'm gonna be real, thinking about it makes my brain hurt. But we know that when someone travels into a storybook, no time at all passes in Twisted Wonderland, but time seems to pass normally within the book. Now, I suppose it's entirely possible that time is non-linear in Twisted Wonderland. Not to show my super Hulock heritage, but it's possible that time is, quote, more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey stuff, and it's not cause and effect per se. This could be an explanation about how Scully was able to hang out with the NRC gang during Twisted Thrills. They both entered the book at the same time, albeit different time periods, because time isn't linear and it's all happening at once. And from Scully's vignette, we know that he entered the book while alive and it wasn't his ghost, since he says that the NRC gang changes you on Halloween, and while he was friendless and alone at NRC, they gave him the willpower to continue to live and move forward. But it's also possible that because time is so weird in these books and magic is a thing, a time thingy just happened and they somehow both came together because domain magic and time is weird and not necessarily because, like, time in Twisted Wonderland is non-linear. Although, to be honest, I do think I just convinced myself that it actually is non-linear, but still. The fact there's weird time stuff going on with the storybooks and with domain magic could indicate that that's what's going on. We also know that domain magic can mess with phone signals. Ordo really had to dig to find Null's satellite so he could send himself over to Styx, because the domain magic, like, blocked off access for, like, any other kind of signal and stuff, like, it blocked off internet and everything. And we know that phones don't work with the storybooks. Or rather, they don't have signal. I think they can still take photos and stuff, but it's just they can't, like, call anyone or go online. But yeah, like, something about the domain magic messes with signal, so that could imply that these storybooks are some sort of domain magic. And also, like the domains we see in Endless Halloween Night in Book 7, there's something keeping people inside the storybooks. You're kind of trapped in there. And yeah, that's all I got for this point, to be honest. Overall, I think there's a lot of potential explanations for what's going on with the storybooks. They could just be enchanted books, they could be a pocket dimension, it could be domain magic. Hell, it could be a combination of some or all of those things. It could be something we don't even know about yet. The storybooks fascinate me because there's so many possibilities of what they actually are, but also, like, we thought we knew what it was during Lost in the Book with Stitch, and then Twisted Thrills just made everything way more insane. And honestly, in the end, I'm not even sure what I think they are. I think all the points I covered have reasonable evidence, but none of them are really swaying me one way or the other. If anything, it's made me think more about time in Twisted Wonderland and made me change my mind on that more than anything else. But let me know what you guys think. Before we go, I'd like to give a massive thank you and telepathic snacky treat to my ladyfingers in waiting as of November 12th, 2025. Thank you for your support and also for being extremely patient with me, since this is like my first actual video since I got blindsided with archival work back in August. I really appreciate you guys sticking around and being really patient with me. So a massive thank you to Michgal2189, Omimi, Visa, Annette, Dorcas, Ukaku, Yoza Kiseki, Farafo, Lady Lunarine, Crabjail, Yungumo, and Richter. Thank you all so much. And also, a massive thank you to everyone else as well for being patient. I'm still not done with archival work, but I'm done with recording everything. The archival recording was a massive undertaking and was one of the most exhausting things I've ever done. So thank you guys as well for being patient with me and sticking around while I was drowning in work. Now that the Wizardess EOS has happened, things will go back to normal here. Thank you everyone, and I hope you guys have a great day or night or whatever you're having, and yeah, bye bye!